of this afternoon, which is a fireside chat, and actually it is called "What Does It Take for Blockchain to Go Large Scale in Logistics?" I think very good question. There are quite a lot of blockchain projects, not all go in large scale indeed, so we try to shed a bit more light on this question during this panel. Moderator of this panel will be Carla Rosen-Vacher. She joined the University of Luxembourg in May 2020 as Outreach Communication Officer in the Faculty of Law, Economics and Finance in support of the Luxembourg Center for Logistics and Supply Chain Management. And Carla, we probably couldn't find a better moderator than you for this panel, because actually you are a native New Yorker from Manhattan. So we represent both the US side and the European side, because you have lived in Luxembourg for more than 20 years. So, and since we have this collaboration with the US here for our conference, very good match, I think. And you will be discussing with two people. First of all, I'd like to present Dr. Inma Borrella. She is a research scientist at the MIT Center for Transportation and Logistics, and her current research explores how digitization and new technologies can improve supply chain operations, increasing visibility and efficiency through innovative approaches. Dr. Borrella, she's a contributor to the MIT Supply Chain Digital Transformation Lab and the MIT Sustainable Supply Chains Lab. And the other participant I have the pleasure to announce is Mark Henkel. Mark is responsible for the growth of sustainable logistics products at ZUFALL. He's also the MD of Tsunami, which is the ZUFALL Logistic Group investment company, and the MD of ZUKONFT, which is a logistic blockchain joint venture. And ZUFALL Logistic Groups is working for a grandchild-ready world with focus on sustainable logistics. And Mark drove a cooperation with Confit.io from Berlin to start the venture ZUKONFT, and I'm sure we will learn a bit more about that very soon. So Carla, with that, I hand you over the stage, and I leave you with good discussions with our speakers.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. And thank you for joining us for this fireside chat about going large scale with blockchain in logistics and supply chains. And as Tom said, we are privileged to have two special guests, Dr. Borrella from our sister Center of Logistics at MIT. And I want to give a big shout out to our sister city of blockchain, which is Boston, Massachusetts. So welcome from Boston. Thank you for joining us. And Mark Henkel, thank you so much for joining us from Berlin. So wonderful to have you. I just wanted to mention to our audience, we welcome your questions, same as the prior panel. Could you please enter them in the question field on the right side of your screen, not in the chat. Those were the directions we were given. So thank you so much. We welcome your questions. All right, let's get started to talk about what it takes for blockchain to go large scale in logistics and supply chains. So I would like to start by asking both Inma from an academic perspective and Mark from your practitioner's perspective. How do we go large scale? We've heard a lot about the origins of blockchain, the advantages, the infrastructure that's transparent and open, but how do we go large scale? Inma, would you like to start, please?
Sure. Thank you very much, Carla. Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here today. Super interesting and insightful presentations before us. So that's the challenging part of being the last one, right? That the greatest points have already been made. So we'll try to contribute something on top of that. So really building on what other guest has said earlier, I think for blockchain to go large scale, it really needs to be better understood. So there's still a lot of confusion around what it means, and particularly what it means for supply chains, right? One of the previous speakers said blockchain inefficient database. I totally agree with that, right? I think it has like these amazing characteristics. It can contribute to create an immutable ledger of data, to be stored in a very secure way. It can enable automatic reconciliation. So just to facilitate the agreement on the single version of the truth for many different parties, but all that comes at a cost. And it's, of course, much less efficient and harder to work with than a database, a traditional database. So understanding what blockchain can bring to the table and also what are the challenges associated with it, I think that's going to be a key element for this to grow beyond proof of concepts and just small pilot projects. Another important point here is the one made by Benny at the start of the session today, and is that this is not a disruptive technology, in my opinion, that can be just plug and play and then it's going to change and improve the process and make it more efficient. It's a transformative technology. It's something that is going to take longer. It's going to take time. We've been talking about blockchain for so long now. We've seen many different initiatives popping up in different industries, in different supply chains, but not so many of those have achieved large scale yet. And that's because it takes time to get educated about it, to understand the benefits associated without it, and to create this critical mass of organizations that come together to work on one blockchain to achieve these benefits that at the end it will be benefits for the ecosystem. Because of course you can have a blockchain only for your company, but that's really not gonna provide something much more valuable than managing a database.
Thank you so much, Inma. Thank you. Mark, would you like to respond to Inma and tell us how you think we can go large scale with blockchain in business, in logistics, and your business?
Yes, sure. I'm not a researcher, so I'm more from the, let's say, from the industry. And
Sure.
Also from my side, thanks for the invitation. It's a great pleasure. And we had our discussion last week where we discussed a bit about this Fireside chat. And I need to admit that I also already need to change some of my opinions after what I heard today. Well, I think you could order things via mail and phone even until I think 2015 or something like this, and the internet was already existing more than 20 years. So I think similar things will happen with blockchain, and that's what I also heard today. So we need use cases. This is what I think, internally and externally. What I mean with internally and externally is ZUFALL is a joint venture from an old 90-year-old logistics company with a young modern company from Berlin, which helped us to develop something via blockchain technology. And in internal discussions in this old family business is the people say, I can also do it with other technologies, and they are right. People could do most of the things you do with blockchain with other technologies, because the magic of the blockchain is when all the things are built and then connected, then it unveils the potential. So currently, replacing a Microsoft Access file, which exists on 3 locations with a blockchain, is not the final end game. But this is how it started with us, right? We had several Excel spreadsheets on several locations with data, and we exchanged like blockchain. And people said, why do we need blockchain? And there's an internal discussion. And externally, I mean, those things like blockchain, they need a fair competition. And I mean, at the moment, proceeds with blockchain, things will become democratized. We will have more transparency, and that is cases which at the moment exist because there is intransparency. This is not what people like And when this is still the case, this hampers blockchain, but I believe this technology will prevail because it will foster democratization of data and
Great, Mark. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that you've already addressed the point about how can scale be transformative enough to make a difference in industry and add value. But can you each give an example of, I know Inma mentioned critical mass already is necessary. We see that in the luxury goods example, the luxury consortium, which thankfully we can relate to on a consumer level without being experts. But can you give another example of associative process of joining forces with all intermediaries in the data processes that would contribute to blockchain being transformative enough?
Sure. Thanks, Carla. That's a great follow-up question. So I think this idea of the critical mass is actually super important for blockchain to actually scale, because for a blockchain to be really transformative for an industry or for a supply chain, you need to have a critical mass of participants just joining forces, joining the blockchain and into it, maintaining the nodes and also contributing with their data. But and that requires, of course, like just having the expertise to do that, and also investing to just have the right data, clean the data, input it into the blockchain, and all that part that is, of course, like is going to be costly. And on the other hand, the value is not still being generated when you're asking other parties to join, right? Because of course this is just a nascent initiative and you want others just to join, but you cannot offer the benefits of this blockchain implementation at a large scale because it's still not large scale. So what I've observed is that initiatives that have gone large scale have started in different ways, and each one of these different ways have been effective. So if I can briefly just talk about these with examples, so we can get an idea of how or what can be driving. So we've seen some big players forcing very, right? So we can see that in the example of Walmart making blockchain mandatory for their leafy greens suppliers. So Walmart joined the Food Trust blockchain launched by IBM and just decided to go like all in with it. And then Walmart has such a strong power in their supply chain. They're such a big buyer. So they just force it upstream and just said their suppliers, the leafy green suppliers specifically, you need to implement blockchain. You need to join this to continue doing business with us. So of course, that's a strong driver to join the blockchain and also achieve a scale relatively fast. Initiative that I've seen is a big player championing horizontal implementation. So that will be the case of Maersk creating a joint venture with IBM, the trade lens, that is actually focused on improving the efficiencies of ocean shipping. And of course, they are a big player in the ocean shipping industry, but they cannot force anyone to join. They represent such a big piece of the cake that they can have a lot of influence in everyone else in the industry. So they developed this initiative and they participate in that supply chain. And I've seen that one like growing pretty fast compared with other initiatives. And finally, another strong driver for scaling is the public policy or regulation. I think this was mentioned earlier too, but for example, in the US, we had this great example of MediLedger, the MediLedger blockchain in the pharma industry. And of course, this was an initiative, it was created by the pharma industry specifically to respond to the Drug Supply Chain Security Act that was by the US administration, and it's going to require to have a track and trace system for US drugs by 2023. So this made all these different companies from the pharma industry to join forces just to be able to respond to these requirements, legal requirements in 2023. So these are things that can accelerate the implementation at the scale. But of course, I mean, we can see other pathways, and we will see others, like more of a industry consortia creating blockchains that become the new operational standard for a whole industry. But just these three pathways were really, or these three really pushed for this fast forward implementation.
Yeah, there's not so much to add from my side, because what you said in that works globally, right? I just could share what does this mean in small companies, because what you said sounds like pan worldwide, right? And what worked on our side is that we have a very young owner who's who got in contact with somebody who's into blockchain, and he was a believer. This is one of the factors. You need somebody who believes in something in the beginning. And you said also mass market, critical market, and in order to get a mass market, you need to not persuade, but you need to have people who believe into this phenomenon, and they need to know what's in for them. So they need to be educated. I think it's a lot about education, and that is what happened on our place. So what we built is, I just give you 1 minute of what our solution is. As a logistics company who manages transports from A to B, somebody calls you and wants to bring a good from A to B, you are responsible for the driver and for the truck. And usually those truck drivers are third parties. They are not on our payroll, but we are in charge of qualifying them. So we need to know, do they have a driver license? Do they have a license for carrying dangerous goods, etc.? There's a whole list of things. And in all times, we were checking those, and they sent them via email to us, and we central. So what we do now is centralize that, store this thing, and we can access, and they can access, and they are the owner of their data. So they don't send it to us, and we are in behalf of it. They are the owners. They get alerted when something expires, etc. And once they created their once they created their data, anyone can access when they allow them to access. And in older days, if they want to work with another spediteur or with another forwarder, they need to send them a batch of information. At the moment, they just need to grant him access to the chain. So we needed to educate those people that the blockchain gives them advantage. It saves time and money, etc. So this is an educational act which costs us a lot of time in the beginning and also a lot of effort, because it's not tangible, right? So the people can't see a blockchain. They can see a floppy disk, or they can see an email, and they can see the sent data, whatever. They can even see a PDF, and it's less tangible. And you're explaining something which in their mind usually is just connected with Bitcoin. So I just tell you, this Bitcoin thing is a distracting factor in my eyes for blockchain. So people just see Bitcoin, and then we tell them, hey, we have a beautiful solution to store your data, and it's democratized, and it's good for you, and it works with blockchain. You need to pay with Bitcoin. What if no, it's not nothing with Bitcoin. So this is a bit what's in our way at the moment, but it's all about educating people, I guess.
Thank you. That's so interesting. You mentioned energy use when we spoke last week. I'm wondering if you could talk to us about how blockchain can be used more efficiently. How can we reduce energy use? And specifically, how do we achieve those efficiencies in large scale, since we're talking about large scale? I also thought of asking, how do we adapt to new consumer demands? For instance, electric cars. There's this huge booming demand now for electric cars. How do we resolve communication problems and safety and security issues, but also environmental issues. When we say energy use, I mean, it's also environmental, it's human rights, it's everything. Can you speak to that point, please?
I hope you ask this question to Inma, because I can't not add anything to this.
Okay, sorry. Inma, would you like to tackle the
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for sending me the hard questions. So if we're talking about efficiency or energy use of the blockchain infrastructure, is that the first question, Carla? Okay, yeah. So
yes.
I think this like very well with Mark was just saying about educating the world about blockchain technology. Experts. Most people here are supply chain practitioners, not necessarily technology experts. So I think it will be worth to make this differentiation, and maybe it was already made, but just super quickly, that we have the public blockchains and the private blockchains, right? And the public ones are the ones that are super energy consuming. They are based on proof of work consensus algorithm that actually just is based on solving this cryptographic puzzle that you need to use a lot of computing power to solve it. And that's the way the blockchain is secured, because it's public and anyone can access it and anyone can participate and can write on it. But they need to follow these rules. And these rules are very computationally expensive, and that makes the blockchain, the public blockchain, secure. So it's the energy use is high by design. So now public blockchains such as Ethereum are working to transition in another consensus mechanisms that are proof of stake, and that's going to be like more efficient and consuming less energy, but of course it's going to have its challenges. But so this technology is evolving very fast, and this is a great big concern for public blockchains. So the Ethereum blockchain is transitioning, so we might see more efficiencies there soon. Private blockchains on the other side, and that's what most business applications for now, there are a limited number of nodes that can actually contribute to the network, and they are known, right? Because if there are 50 companies in my blockchain, each one running one node, then it's not open to anyone in the world. It's just these 50 companies with 50 nodes. And then the consensus mechanism is different, and it's based on, some common ones are voting based or lottery based. So it's just, for example, like randomly allocating who will be verifying or adding the next block. So the energy use there is not such an issue. It's actually it's kind of like the structure, the data structure is going to be the same, but the way of adding new blocks and just building this consensus is going to be different, and it's way more efficient because the number of nodes is much smaller and it's a much more controlled environment. So without going into more technicalities, that's the difference between public and private. And then, of course, both have their advantages and depending on the applications. But for now, most yes, that's what answers the question, Carla. And if it was clear enough.
Thank you, Inma. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, maybe we can ask Mark together who will benefit from going large scale in blockchain. So Mark, obviously your venture is benefiting, your logistics company is benefiting. What industries will benefit the most, and what investors? I mean, you obviously need investors, right, in this infrastructure. So thank you.
This question has to be, right? Everybody. I think we need to talk about the question needs to be asked to the applications which are built upon the blockchain and not the blockchain itself. And so I currently cannot see any borders, or I cannot see where blockchain cannot be used, as it will become an infrastructure, an underlying infrastructure for everything. And I think, again, to stress Bitcoin, this was just the first thing, and it's a bit of like bribery, or because it's also an abuse of the blockchain, right? It was so easy to use this and to make money upon this. Coming back to the point, I believe that there are so many business models out there which at the moment just work because there's intransparency, because two parties agree on something and don't tell a third person. And if this ends, and if this is democratized, then there is so much opportunity out there for blockchain. So if you see the whole Uber models, so if you take Airbnb or whomever, there are somehow centralized ledgers. They could be decentralized. So you could give the power to the people who rent the apartments. You could give the power to the taxi drivers who give their sweat the cabs. But what happens is that some Silicon Valley venture capitalists invest in one company which take all the rents from the poor Uber drivers, and they are not decentralizing, they are centralizing the power. So if an Airbnb on a blockchain, okay, some people in Silicon Valley would lose a lot of investment, but you would give power back to the people. And I think that's a question: is this wanted? Yeah, is the power strong enough that, or is let's take the analogy of, are there enough Jedi Knights who can fight against the imperial forces in order to get this done? So blockchain is a bit of the good way, but there's a lot of bad ways, and we need to fight against them.
Thanks for leading into my next question. I wanted to ask, because it sounds all rosy, of course, and democratic, which is really good. But what are the downside risks, or what is the downside notably to scaling up blockchain? Is there a limit? Inma or Mark?
I can start. And just maybe to complement just super quickly to the previous question, there are two spaces that where I see that blockchain can be very promising too, beyond luxury food, pharma, logistics that we already mentioned. I think the aerospace industry, where the technical parts is very, very important, also the life cycle of those parts. So that's it's already being used there, and I think it's very powerful. And another one is circular economy. It didn't come up in the previous conversations, but I think blockchain can actually be very powerful to enable these more circular supply chains and circular economy models that have been so challenging, just because we didn't have a tool like this one that can ensure the traceability of parts and components and actually the ingredients of the components that go into batteries, for example. So that could be that's an interesting one, at least for me. And just wanted to mention that regarding the downside to scaling up, I don't think there is a downside. And we're starting to see these more implementations at the scale. Of course, we really don't know where this is going to lead us, and all these possibilities, as Mark pointed out, I think they are, and also Benny in his talk, these transformative new models that may arise from blockchain. I think sometimes we lack the imagination to really picture them, but we're starting to see hints of what it could become. On the other hand, I think we need to be aware of one challenge, it's something that is inherent to blockchain. Blockchains are are great. They are decentralized, tamper resistant. They're distributed, so they are very resistant to any to damage or destruction. But since they are autonomous systems, that's right. You just put them in place, and they have their own life, or they might, particularly if they are public blockchains. They are relatively inflexible. So that makes them vulnerable to unforeseen consequences. So I think that's something we should keep in mind when we're deciding that changing them, particularly if they have achieved a certain scale, might be challenging, and that they might be a better fit for processes that are easily automated and they are not going to be changed in the foreseeable future.
Fantastic. So well explained. Thank you. Mark, did you want to add anything on that point? No. You don't think there's a downside to Okay. Well, I think I don't have any questions coming in. If the audience would like to ask a question, please enter it in the question field. But I did want to ask a final question about your individual goals. So Inma, in your research, and Mark, in your business, you've talked, of course, about what you're doing, but what are your goals in the, let's say, near term, the next 2 years, and the medium term, 5 years? Obviously, it's extremely hard to project even into next year, but what evolution do you see in the near and the medium term?
Mark. So I'm really interested in exploring how to get to this critical mass for blockchain implementations to actually start to create value for an industry or for a supply chain. And what I found a really interesting space is just how to identify the right system of incentives to be able to attract participants and maintain them to participate in these blockchain systems. So what I found in my research and also in discussions with different companies is that the incentives for one party, for example, in visibility, right, or visibility of one process, like full visibility, can be an incentive for one party, but it can be a disincentive for another one. And I think this was pointed out by Mark earlier too, right? There are some participants that may be needed and you want to have them on board in your blockchain, but they might not be so willing to just disclose all the information that is needed. Or so how do you incentivize like all the different parties to join and to share? It would be like one potential evolution to this would be using to create these incentives for participation, speed up payments, also unlocking cash flow, supply chain, maybe in combination with implementation than we are in space. And a couple other exciting avenues, maybe more for the longer term that you mentioned, Carla, in maybe 5 years, could be the use of public blockchains, maybe with creating this cross-chain exchange ledgers. I think that could be very powerful too, also for this problem of like blockchains, a lot of different blockchains initiative are not talking to each other. Maybe one possible solution would be this, using public blockchains at the common point for implementations. Also, private smart contracts in public blockchains, I think that those holds a lot of potential. And of course, zero knowledge proof technology, I think that's going to be, that can become very valuable for business applications and particularly for supply chain ones.
Thank you so much, Inma. Mark, would you like to jump on?
Before I answer the question, what is on my mind for the future, I need to say I never had such a nice panel. I need to say I need really to thank Inma because she, it's so great also the last week. It was so great to discuss with you the topic. And Carla, you're such a great host. It's not a fireside chat because we're not sitting to a fireside, but I'm really feeling that we are sitting together, looking in the same fire, and one of us has a guitar, and we are looking for people from abroad listening to our songs. So thanks for this. Well, what's on my mind in terms of, I need to mission more people. I need to talk to more people. I want, we have not yet unveiled the power of the blockchain, as I said. At the moment, we are just building foundations. We're just building small little satellites where the blockchain works, but where it could be replaced with a different solution. And I want to see the point when those satellites are connected to each other. So when these blockchains are connected to each other. And I think this then will unveil a huge potential, and will also show people the additional value, right? So at the moment, they just see this small, different version of data storage, right? See what's really in there. And I just preparing this point in time when shit hits the fan, like we said. So when those things really come together, because I think this will be mind-blowing.
Great. Thank you for your kind words, Mark. It's been so great to have you and Inma. And I think, I don't know if Tom wants us to wrap up, but it's almost 4 o'clock. So thank you so much to both of you. And I just wanted to wrap up by saying I learned that we need a better understanding of blockchain, that it's not a disruptive technology, that it's actually transformative and a foundational infrastructure, and that industry, logistics, and supply chains, of course, can benefit from this ecosystem, but it will take time to create critical mass, and we need critical mass to go large scale. But the point is to create value and offer transparency and security, especially in traceability. And I really loved your point about circular economy, because that does bring the environmental aspect into it. So thank you for that. And it was a pleasure having you. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you.